Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wilder Ride Listeners Lounge. It's a sidecast to our main podcast where we're not looking at a movie 1 minute at a time, but we are talking with a guest and looking at their life one moment at a time. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
I'm your co-host, Walt Murray.
And Walt, we're going to change in a completely new direction. I think this is the first time we're going to have somebody on whose job it is to capture the story in images.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have long been one of those people who likes to take pictures and then wonder what the devil I did wrong. so you know, and one, you know, I have a stupid story for everything. You know, something dumb I've done with every guest. I think that we've
That's called experience.
Yeah, I have experience. Whether I've translated that to wisdom, I'm not sure. One night I was headed up to North Carolina, and a girl that I was sort of seeing had some car trouble in Atlanta, so I was following her back to her home in North Carolina to make sure she made it okay.
You were following her back.
Maybe
she
didn't
needs
know
more,
it.
Maybe more than the car needs jumping off. Let's see what happens.
Well, in typical fashion, we got pulled over. Both of us got pulled over. And it was in this awesome part of North Carolina where it's just a beautiful sunset and everything. So the officer's writing her ticket, and I'm taking pictures of the sunset. And he comes walking back, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Man, I'm taking pictures of this awesome sunset." And he goes, "You're an idiot. Why don't you just go ahead?" So he didn't even write me a ticket, just sent me on my way.
Are you kidding?
Nope.
I don't have any stories like that. Mine are usually... not only am I stopped, I'm usually detained for a while. They're just like, "Did you realize that you missed out on a bench warrant from 1975? Like, I was only 5. Like, yeah, but you know, it was in your name. How do you still have that on record?
Yeah, I've had one time where I got detained, and that was because Georgia had some funky law about the way that the little stickers were, you know, that go on your tag.
Mm-hmm.
So they would give you like the previous, like, I can't explain it. It was like your sticker would show the previous year on it instead of the year ahead. And so I got stopped by this Mississippi State patrolman for, you know, dog in a red light or a dog in a stop sign. And he was like, he goes, "Oh, I don't think your tag is valid." And I was like, "Well," and I'm trying to explain this to him. He goes, "That sounds like total BS to me. Hang on." So they actually called the Georgia State Patrol to ask how our tag system worked to figure out whether or not I had a valid tag. I'm like, great. Thank you, Mississippi, for not having computers.
Anyone else tells me that story, I'm like, whatever. You tell me that story, I'm like, yeah, no, that ain't no shit. That's Walt.
It happened. No, I'm an idiot. And it's like, have you never stopped anybody else from Georgia before? He's like, "No, I think this is the first. Congratulations."
What did I win?
Yeah, I didn't want to ask that question.
No. All right, well, obviously we're hinting at photography. That is a guy we're bringing on, but he is also a podcaster, also loves movies, also dives into the minutia. So it's going to be a lot of fun because we're going to be kind of in our side of the pool. The last few guests we've had, I'm like, I can only just look at your life through envious eyes. This is a guy who's like, wow, I can relate to.
Yeah, well, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I've never played professional football, believe it or not. I haven't been a Navy SEAL. You know, but all people who I respect greatly. But yeah, and Curtis was asking us why we wanted him on. And I was like, well, because you do cool stuff that we like. So yeah, we wanted to spend time hanging out and chatting with somebody like us.
Well, and honestly, I've dabbled in photography for a while. I've got a video production company, and it's a different style. I have a friend of mine who's a professional photographer. She actually had a good eye for it and just sort of learned by doing, and eventually realized I can make more money doing photography than being a teacher.
Yeah.
And now she's won so many different awards. She's been in international competitions. She's been flown prior to COVID and everything. She's been flown to multiple countries to do everything from corporate photography to wedding photography. She's, it's incredible. And the two of us, we were sitting there talking, and because I needed her on a video shoot I was doing because the client wanted to do headshots for everyone who worked at the law firm while we were shooting the commercial. And she and I were talking about how, even though we're both capturing images, how different it is. She's like, I need one frame to look perfect. You're trying to have 30 seconds of everything working perfectly, or 15 seconds or 2 minutes, however long that cut's going to be. I said, yeah, it's different, but it's still about framing. It's still about storytelling. It's still about capturing, the composition of what's in the frame. So I'm looking forward to talking to Curtis and figuring out, when did he discover his passion? When did he decide? Because it's not about the gear. I can tell you right now, I know jackasses who have bought $5,000-$6,000 worth of gear, and it still looks like crazy drunk Uncle Bob taking pictures at a party. That doesn't make you a photographer.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, I do actually take a lot of video and a lot of pictures in my job, but mine's always like wrecked cars or cheating spouses or something like that.
You're just about the creativity of the shot.
No, mine's about documentation of history and what are they doing, and getting a clear shot of their face and a clear shot of whatever else it is that they're doing. And then go telling that story in a report and telling it in court. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to Curtis too, just to get the artistic side of photography.
Well, I know he's in the back room, blushing and gushing, and actually probably just pounding all the free food before we bring him on stage. Before we get to our guest, what's been going on with you this past week?
Well, just kind of enjoying the spring a little bit, but also dealing with, cutting grass and pollen and all that fun stuff. This is spring break for the kids, so they're all out and driving me bananas, and it's only Monday. So,
well, guess what? We're only into April, but we are already getting ready for our first glamping trip. So watch for those pictures to land starting this coming Friday. Now, by the time this episode comes out, we will have already returned from our glamping, but we always like a buffer just in case we have a guest flake, or, I forget I have a guest that I'm supposed to be interviewing and I'm behind. So, but we're going to do our first camping trip. And the wife has already booked the next 3, which is kind of cool. But on the flip side, they want all that money up front. So I'm like, whoa. Where's all this money going? She's like, well, we're not going to be going till September. I'm like, yeah, I know, but we're paying for it now. You're hitting it all at once.
Well, and the bad thing is everything is getting booked. I was thinking about going out of town for a couple days out to Wyoming, and you can't get a hotel anywhere near Yellowstone because now everybody's coming out of quarantine and going, hey, I'm going to take that vacation that I couldn't take last year.
And at the very least, people that may be still more cautious. They go, hey, if we're outside, we're okay. And they're going to all of these outdoor destinations. So yeah, you're absolutely right. My wife is doing it correctly. I'm not knocking it because we do have these campsites locked in, but she's literally locking in September of this year, and we've already paid for it.
Well, and did you see that the, I think it's the Farmer's Almanac and someone else just released an article that this could possibly be the shortest growing season and shortest summer that we've had in like 15 years, because there are more volcanoes erupting right now than at any other time.
You mentioned that. Did you do it on one of the episodes, or you and I talked so damn much? I don't know what we've said in a podcast versus, but no, and that's true. Oh, we were talking about what? Yeah, I think you and I were talking on an episode, but then it happened to coincide with the anniversary just recently of the eruption of Mount St. Helens.
Yeah, that's right.
And we were talking about how, the first couple of winters after St. Helens was some of the coldest winters and some of the longest winters because all those dust particles in the atmosphere. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens, what Mother Nature has in store for us. She doesn't march by anybody else's drummer but her own.
Yeah, exactly right. That's why we need to get the boat in the water as early as possible this year and get out and camp as early as possible, because we may not have as long a season to do that.
Well, you owe me fishing because we didn't get a chance to do it last year.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do it here in the next week or two.
All right. Enough blather. That's basically what this is for 10 minutes while the guest sort of, like I said, pounds all the free food and gets our free beer. And we're going to bring him to the stage now. We're going to talk with a podcaster, a photographer, and an all-around great guy. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our guest, Curtis Blaze. Curtis, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on, guys.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know with what you do, it's probably a fluid schedule. It's based on what's good for the lighting, the client, when they want you, when they need you. So thank you for taking time.
Oh, you're welcome. I was listening. You guys have these great set of Bose back in the green room that I was listening to the show on at studio monitors, and I was listening to your show while I was eating the shrimp back there. By the way, yummy. And
those weren't shrimp. I don't know where those came from.
Oh no.
It's pizza today.
Okay, so what was in that Scotch bottle then?
Oh, that was shrimp. Yes, that was shrimp.
What was in the Scotch bottle?
It sounds like you guys. Know some pretty famous kind of photographers, and I'm just like a regional guy who does some weddings and kind of does some model stuff and a couple of small magazines and stuff. But I'm honored to be on. I'm glad you guys want to hear about my story.
Well, the thing is, every single time you post a picture of something you've done, I'm like, yeah, I couldn't do that. Like I couldn't make it look like this.
I think what Walt is also saying is he'd be so enamored with the person being having photographed, he wouldn't be able to focus on taking the picture.
Now, sometimes that may be true.
Well, before we tease everything, let's go back and start at the very beginning, because a lot of people discover these creative careers and maybe even go on to a full-time career with what had been a hobby later in life. So, Curtis, when did you first discover your love of and then decided you could actually start moving toward doing photography as sort of a career?
That's kind of a weird answer. That was
actually my question.
What I'm trying to say is the answer. The answer is one I've been thinking about because I anticipated this interview coming up. The first photo I took. Okay, check this out. I'm a garbage man. It's 1996. I've got my own truck. I'm working for Waste Management in Wisconsin. And I won some award for being a great garbage man or something. And they gave me a little camera, back in the days when they had film. It was like a 35 millimeter camera with a fixed lens. I don't know how fast the lens was now, but and I just started like stopping my truck to take pictures of cool things back then. Mm-hmm. It started, the boudoir thing started a little bit before that when I was in the Navy, but that was only a one-time deal. I was in Signolia, Italy, and a couple girls wanted me to like help them take pictures of themselves. So I was like, yes, let's go do that.
Absolutely.
But getting serious about
Did you want to disrobe? I mean, I'm totally cool. I'm way open-minded.
No, yeah, they were those kind of photos. Yeah. It was a wild night.
Here's your direction. Frolic. Just frolic. I'll capture
Frolic.
it. Don't worry.
And do you need any help?
Do you need any inspiration? I might be able to give you a point or two.
Oh my God. It really isn't like that, but
I know. But it is the wilder ride, so this is what you get.
So I started taking photos like for fun back in about 93. And it was mostly nature and art, scenic stuff and, details of statues and just little things, I like to get perspective. I like to get leading line stuff. So, things diminishing to the horizon, just whatever I could that was artistic and seemed like it looked good to me. And people said that some stuff looked pretty good. But I didn't. And I just want to, before we go on, I just want to differentiate between pro and expert. A lot of people struggle when they are talking about photography because they get a camera and then they get a camera for Christmas, and then by February they're calling themselves professionals because someone paid them $30 to take a picture of their kid in front of a Christmas tree. So I kind of like to. So the group I'm in kind of thinks of ourselves, differentiates between professionals and experts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well,
Professionals make money. Experts are actually good at what they do, and some professionals are experts.
Right. I got exactly, because I was going to say, just because you do it as a profession doesn't mean you're good at it.
Right. Even if you're making money. In fact, really making money, the secret is just being able to market, not being a good photographer.
Well, I was going to say, I've seen like wedding pictures that are just horrifyingly bad.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, do you understand that the main subject of the picture needs to at least be somewhere near the center? And I just wonder how these people make any money doing it.
Just hearing you say that the subject should be near the center of the picture tells me that you are not an expert.
He does not know about his quadrants.
Yeah, especially with wedding photography. I do that as well. I'm kind of a regional wedding photographer. And really, I shoot with someone who's just a master. I second shoot. I don't presume to take on weddings myself because I don't like brides to begin with. They're terrible people, especially on their wedding day. And this guy I work with, I just learn something every time I go work with him. He's just a master of everything. He just, So the weddings I do, what I've discovered now being in that market is that you get what you pay for. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of moms who just got a camera for Christmas that are doing weddings the following April. And the guests could do better if everybody just hashtagged a photo with their iPhones frequently.
Yeah. No, actually, what's kind of funny is before the pandemic, a lot of the weddings that we would attend, they would put the sort of the Instamatics on all of the tables and just said, take candid snapshots, and then they would collect them all, and then they found all the ones they just liked, and you just got random cool ones that were impromptu, not posed, not professional, and those tended to be some of the cool ones.
Well, and I actually do tell people that quite a bit. There are people that have a budget of less than like $6,000 for the wedding photos. And I'll frequently tell them, just have everyone take photos with their phones. Hire someone for an hour, hire a pro for an hour who knows how to pose you and light you right to do your formals.
Yeah, get the wedding party and the church pictures.
Yeah, and save some money that way. Get your formals done by a pro that knows what they're doing. You will definitely have better photos if you have a pro running around for the entire reception and the entire wedding. Mm-hmm. But you can get away with cameras are good enough these days, is what I'm saying. And this happens with family photography too. There's places that I want to be careful here because I don't want to alienate any of my fellow photographers. There are places that don't charge very much. It is kind of the got a camera for Christmas situation. Mm. And they'll take photos that are cute and they know lots of people. So they'll go out with their fancy equipment and they'll take photos that the family themselves could have just saved the money on and like with a tripod and a cell phone taken the same photo. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so I kind of informally teach people how to just take good photos with their camera so they can save, $300 on. I'm gonna back this up a little bit. People that only have $300 to spend on something like a family photo, they don't really have enough money to spend. They don't really have enough of a budget to get a photographer that's going to make a difference.
Right. Gotcha.
You're gonna if you're not paying sort of in the neighborhood of like $1,500 for photos, then you're not really getting a photographer that knows what they're doing or that's confident enough. And so it's like, oh, you could capture that stuff. Anyone who's just running out and calling themselves a natural light photographer and shooting with a 24 to 70 millimeter zoom lens, that's a 2.8 or something. If that means anything to you guys.
Yeah, it does to me a little bit.
Like you could just do that with your phone. And so I kind of teach people that if they come to me and they're like, we don't want to pay an arm and a leg, and I'm like, well, I don't really want to work for nothing, so how about you just pay me $25 and I teach you how to use your phone quick, and then you go out and if you don't like that, then you can go hire someone.
You know what's amazing? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, well, you ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so every industry has like really good people, really bad people, and kind of those middle of the road people. And as someone who might hire a photographer, what are the things I need to look for to know this is not the guy I need to hire?
Well, I don't know.
Obviously, if he pulls up in a van that also sells ice cream on the side, probably not the right guy.
Nah, there's bums that know how to use a camera that live down by the river. It would be amazing.
Stand against the wall; it'll look better.
I would really just. There is something to be said for you get what you pay for with this. If someone's confident enough to charge you $1,500 to do your, family photos, or $500 to do your headshots, they know that they're going to be in trouble with you, and they're going to have cash flow problems if they don't pull off a $500 photo for you. But also, I don't know, look at their portfolio, see what they're doing.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Do a reverse image search to make sure they didn't steal their portfolio photos from someone better.
Well, that's one of the things that I've always, suggested to friends of mine. I was like, look at the bridal pictures, look at their demos, look at what they've done, and see, and then say, hey, if they're worthwhile, say, do you have any of your clients that I can reach out to and just, kind of get as a reference? You should have a handful of people that don't mind giving you a positive reference.
References for sure. Yeah. References is another big deal.
I mean, because if I'm not going to tell you who I've taken pictures for, I'm too afraid for you to go talk to them. There's a red flag right there.
Well, yes, you're right about that. I'm just thinking
I get that there's going to be certain clients where you're keeping I'm just saying in general, I should have 3 or 4 people. I have no problem saying, well, here's so-and-so's number, here's so-and-so's email. I did their work for them. I should, as a videographer, I'm ready to drop every one of my client names and phone numbers for anybody who's like, well, I want to know, I just want a referral. I have no problem with that because every one of my clients I treat 100% gold.
No, you're absolutely right. The only thing I kind of hesitate when I say that about people is because, people don't really know what good photography is, if that makes sense. There's a lot of cute photos out there that are terrible that people love. There's a lot of photographers that people swear by, and technically they couldn't win a county fair photo contest, but they've got good marketing, and people are smiling on cue and nobody's blinking their eyes, so it's really good. But that's not the same. People don't really know good photography. They know when they've had a good experience. And that is what I do the references for, to see if you've had a good experience with the photographer. And then mix that with checking out the portfolio and seeing if the prices seem to make sense for someone who's confident enough to do some shooting.
So probably if their photos are showing up on awkwardfamilyphotos.com, not somebody who you want to hire.
I don't know, man. Someone who's taking a lot of photos. Well, I don't know. Maybe they just have a bad choice of, or they have a bad choice of what photos to use. No.
And of course, I guess maybe their subjects are not helping a whole lot.
Well, actually,
subjects aren't helping a whole lot.
You bring up an interesting point, though, and there is an argument to be made. Just because it may not be artistic to a true photographer, if the client likes a style of shooting,
right,
it's what the client wants.
And if you like somebody's style, then you like their style. And that's all there is to it. What else is there to love?
Right.
If it is one of those, and I'm trying not to sound like I'm putting this down too much, but if you do like one of those $50 photographers and their style is consistent throughout their thing, and that's what you want, then that's the right photographer for you.
So how often do you find as you're working with a subject that you kind of come to loggerheads with things where you're like, well, here's really what you need to do. They have another vision in their head that that vision doesn't work, and you have to kind of pull them out of that tailspin and get them on track. Just
never. Here's my deal. I'm not. This isn't one of those. I do boutique photography. Every shoot that I do is specially created for the person. So we'll have a pre-meeting before the shoot where we review makeup and we review outfits and we talk about what set we're going to build or where the set's going to be if we're going on location somewhere. and kind of what the mood is going to be. And we have mood boards on the wall, and we're narrowing it all down to what we're going to do. Our visions are locked in by the time we're shooting. We don't want to be shooting and then trying to figure out what we're going to do when I pick up the camera.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we've already pretty much got the shoot mapped out, and it is explicit. I don't know if we've explicitly mentioned this, but mostly I'm a boudoir photographer.
We haven't yet, but I know Walt has enjoyed that.
Most of the money I make is from like boudoir and erotic and explicit photography. Mm-hmm. And so we always have meetings beforehand saying exactly what's going to be depicted in the photos beforehand. There's not going to be any surprise nipples. There's not going to be any surprise genitals. Everything is pretty much mapped out, and we know what we're doing. So to answer that question, I don't have any experience being at odds with a client over what we're shooting because we already have it all mapped out. And sometimes,
yeah. And I guess in that world, there has to be a high comfort level on both parties' parts to be able to do that well.
Yeah, and the comfort level just, the main thing is just talking about consent, making sure that everybody knows what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's what's funny. You talk about how you can figure out whether or not you're working with somebody that is quality. That is the most important first step. I always say pre-production is the cheapest place to figure out all the places you're going to screw up. Mm-hmm. On paper, before you start building anything, before you start committing to anything, before you start renting or buying anything, if you've done the due diligence ahead of time, that customer or that client should feel like, wow, you've thought of everything. It's all on paper. Hasn't happened yet, but at least you feel like, wow, you know what to think about. You know the questions to ask.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of one of the things. Like a typical pre-meeting would be, figuring out what products they're going to be, what products they're going to buy. So let's just go simple. Let's say it's one of my lower budget people. They're just going to get a Snow little black book of boudoir, and so we're going to have we've got 20 pages to fill, and we're going to have a centerfold page, and we're going to have a couple of pages that are variations of the same pose and stuff. So we're going to figure out that we need, 40 photos for the thing. And then we're going to go through and do the mood on the photos. And frequently what we'll try to do with these books is tell a story. We'll start off with, kind of being dressed or whatever, and then kind of lose clothing throughout and sort of get into the boudoir of it. And then maybe take it a little bit more naughty towards the middle, and then come back out and end up on cute and end up with like just some cute sort of almost portrait at the end of the book or whatever it is. That's an example of what we'll do. Some things get more involved because we also install art for people. So if we're doing like a wall display for someone, we'll go to their house and we'll measure that out. We'll plan it out. We'll get everything pre-ordered and ready to go, so that on the day of, all I got to do is make the light right, hit the photos and stuff, and then that also gives them kind of a chance, because a lot of non-models, clients are not models,
right?
And doing a boudoir shoot is like going through a 3-hour yoga session. It's painful and it's hard.
That is so funny.
It gives them a chance to get used to doing that kind of stuff, moving around and go ahead.
That my photographer friend, she said, because she does some of those very similar photos, more of the classy boudoir, but very, very tasteful kind of the high end is what she goes for. But she's like, to get sometimes the pose you want, you're not in a very comfortable pose. You're trying to get the frame. And and then you got to sell it with your face as if you're somehow comfortable in the particular pose you're in.
Right. It's like, you've got your back arched and you're cheating your torso towards the camera, but you're cheating your hip away from the camera so that we can get like that sort of, I don't know what you call it, that pelvic mound showing the right way, but also no wrinkles in your waist as you're twisting. And we're doing all that, and we're doing it while spiking the camera with your eyes and not having forehead wrinkles.
Right. It's a lot of work.
No problem.
This is what's so funny when people start thinking about erotic shoots or anything like that. There's so much work that goes into trying to get just that one shot that looks effortless.
Yeah, they think it's just take your clothes off and light it from the side.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who is trying to make her way into that modeling side, and I tell her all the time, I'm like, you're gorgeous, but you're working with bad photographers. You shouldn't look like you've got fat wrinkles. You shouldn't look like you've got, it's weird, it's things that they just don't pay attention to, where I can see, because I'm used to the composition of a shot. I'm like,
Sure.
well, why did you have a shadow there? Like, that makes no sense. It makes it look weird. Like, did you not notice that? Like, oh, well, I didn't notice until you just pointed it out.
Right.
So sometimes they just don't know what to look for.
You should be nicer about it. Like, that looks weird. What's that weird shadow there? Do you have a third
No,
nipple? What's
Alan
wrong with
is
you?
he just tells it like it is.
Well-
He calls balls and strikes.
I do.
You are ugly.
No, I don't say that. I don't like.
That's kind of one of the things
Are you
about...
sure maybe we don't want to try maybe more clothes rather than less? Let's
kind of one
go
of
the
the
opposite
things-
direction. Maybe go Victorian. Maybe high collars, long dresses. That might be interesting.
All of that. We think about all that stuff. We do. That's what happens on. That's what happens on Wardrobe Day.
But okay, so let's kind of we've sort of dove into your specialty. But when did you start realizing that there was a niche for you, that you had because you have to have an eye for it. Some photographers are much better at streetscapes. Some are much better at, let's say, nature photos. But people posing, and then you start moving into this world, that's a skill, because you have to also create the comfort level that you as the photographer have to emanate. So when did you find you had a knack for this?
I'd never had a knack for it. What happened was, I'm the editor of the Sac News here in Sac City, and there's a lot of crime, and there's a lot of, like, it's only a 2,000 person town. It's only an 11,000 person county. So back in 2007, when I started the Sac News, everything I was covering was like people getting arrested and city council meetings and stuff like that. And everyone was always angry at me all the time. And some advisors said, well, why don't you just start taking pictures of football games or something to kind of balance that out a little bit, so it isn't all just, local dirtbag getting arrested for meth stories. And I'm like, I can do that. So I went out and started doing that. And people kind of responded to those photos. A couple of football moms are like, hey, can you come do our family stuff? And then a couple of family things were like, hey, can you do my boudoir? It just kind of led into it. And I did some, and they weren't great. And then about, and it didn't really go anywhere. It was 5 or 6, clients in that respect. And then about 2016, I hired this assistant, and she just was mean to me. She would look at a photo and tell me the 7 reasons it sucked. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So I started correcting that stuff, and then I started looking for that stuff. And if it wasn't for her, I don't know if I would be any good now, but her just being just merciless to me all the time just created I never had a knack. I was taught by my assistant to quit sucking, and that was my weak spot, was learning how to pose people. And she would say, oh no, fat right there. And she'd go, oh, highlight right there, it's blown out. Oh, what's this piece of hair doing? How come you didn't see that? And
right.
There's nothing more valuable, I think, to any photographer than just having someone who's a friend, or in my case, a hired assistant who just will be honest and brutal with you, just brutal. And that brutality is how I learned. So
but you
maybe
know
it's
what,
a knack now, because it's just second nature to look for these things each time before I click the photo. Because I don't want to take 10 photos and then hopefully one of them turns out. I want to take one photo that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so
and there's only so much you want to be doing in post as well. I know you can do a lot now with Lightroom, After Effects, Photoshop, all the stuff. But if you can just get the shot right the first time, there's a lot less work you have to do on the post-production side.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's the same with video. It's the exact same with video. There's some things we can fix in post. I mean, that's always the joke on the set. Like, oh, well, we'll just fix it in post. And like my editor's going, no, wait, no. It's a lot cheaper right now. We can just shoot this one again. So
that's kind of one of the things. If someone's in the habit of saying we can fix it in post, maybe you don't want to hire them.
Right. Right.
Good point.
So, okay. So it wasn't necessarily a knack, but you certainly gravitated toward that, either because you just ground yourself into being better, you just wanted to excel, make less mistakes the next time, and recognize what to do better.
Yeah, I just worked super
You
hard.
fell in love with it.
What's that?
You fell in love with it at some point.
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
you?
for sure. It's great. There's nothing. God, that feeling when you're sitting in the dark in your display room and you're doing the reveal of the photos and you've got your big screen with your projector and you start scrolling through them and you realize that your client is crying because they've never in their lives imagined they could look that beautiful. That's just, I don't even know. It's just an incredible feeling. You can't. That's what I'm in love with. That moment. I'm so excited about getting them. Well, obviously this last year, but getting them back in the display room in person and starting to scroll through their photos and starting to that first reveal is just so emotional and so cool. And then you got an hour of figuring out where they're going to go in the book, and that gets tedious. But everybody's done crying by then. But yeah, that's what
awesome.
I love.
When you feel that, whatever your career is, that's how you know you found a vocation where that's something you want to do forever. I
agree. I don't really know what else to say about that. That's my whole thing right there. That's my whole kick. Just being able to. Well, I like people when they flatter me, of course, saying how great I am, but really that moment where you realize they are just over there with the tissues and stuff. And I've got all that set out. I've got the snacks and the tissues and the water. They're ready to go over in their seat. But yeah, that's it. There's just nothing more gratifying than that sort of moment when it comes down to it.
All right. Well, before we move into the podcasting world, because you do have a side jaunt that actually is how we learned who each other was. We cross paths. Where is your photography going at this point? Where do you see yourself with what you do 5 years from now?
It's hard to tell. A lot more clients. Because of COVID, a lot more regular people are getting into OnlyFans. And so it's taking more of a explicit turn as more just regular housewives are charging $10 for their nudes online. So I don't kind of know where that's going to go. We do offer a program for that pays okay. There's not a lot of just getting, well, no, there's still a lot of just getting, the gifts for their husband kind of shoots. But, I don't know. Where am I going to be? I don't know. I haven't really given that any thought. I just go day to day. I try to make sure that I have one person a week booked so that I can make money.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, when it comes down to it, yeah, it's about survival as well. You got to, as much as you love what you do, if nobody comes to your door, you can't make a living at it.
Right. Well, I just really like it. I hope in 5 years, if I'm going to say something, that I have more mature people buying my services, because it's mostly 23-year-olds and 30-year-olds that are just kind of doing it once for fun. I kind of want to get more into that market of people that kind of do a yearly update, kind of getting pictures of themselves throughout the years to look back on when they're older,
Oh, see, when you said mature, I thought you were talking about you want like those people's moms.
Well, yeah. Well,
hey, you look great.
Just to put it out
How's
there,
your mom?
The moms have the money.
Yeah, the moms have the money.
Right.
Indeed.
Well, I think that's awesome. Honestly, and if my wife ever decided to do something like that for me, I would be thrilled. I mean, I think that's just really, really cool because it's a lot. You're putting yourself out there, because when you're not a model and you're trusting the photographer to do everything in their power to make you still look like you want to look, that's a skill. That is an actual skill. And to have that kind of trust in the photographer, it says something about you.
Yeah.
Okay, the head nods don't really work in a podcast.
Yep, head nods work in the podcast.
Well, and I'll tell you, Curtis, one thing that I do regret.
I may have invented podcasting, and I'm nodding on a podcast.
Well, one thing I do regret, Curtis, is that having lost my mom last year, I wish that over the last few years of her life.
Wait, careful how you phrase this based on boudoir photography, Walt.
No. I know exactly what he's about to say. I wish there was some way. I'm going to let you finish your sentence, and then I've got an answer. Go.
Yeah, I just wish that I had taken the time to get my mom and my kids in front of a professional photographer a few times before she passed.
Yeah.
And just over those last few years to do something like that.
Yeah. This is the thing I struggle with. I so badly want to put out like posts saying, hey, it's your mom's birthday, get a photo.
Yeah.
Because the obits are coming up.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want a picture of her in her wife beater Mickey Mouse shirt with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth to be the final photo that you're framing and remembering her by.
That's right. And I want my kids to remember her.
Right.
In those really good pictures too.
Well, so I'm just going to take this opportunity right now. Everyone, on your birthday, get a good portrait done. Even if it's just you standing in a white room out of direct sunlight with your cell phone, so that you've got good even light on your face and lights bouncing all over and making your skin look beautiful. Get that photo done every year on your birthday, so that it doesn't matter. I mean, there's a lot of dark reasons. If your kids go missing, you want a good one of them. If you need an obituary picture, whatever it is, get that photo done just on your birthday. Just do it.
Well, and have something for your kids to remember you by as well.
Right.
Something good and positive, and yeah, I mean, because you're not going to be around forever. I'm not going to be around forever.
I don't like to post that kind of stuff, though, because it sounds self-serving. It's like, hey, you might die pretty soon. Come get a picture.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Life is life, and bad things happen sometimes. And but good things happen too. And you want your kids and your grandkids to remember those good things that you did together.
Right.
So, you know, and that's kind of what...
And not just when they find your boudoir album that I took.
Oh, mine? Yeah, don't find mine.
Walt left his laptop open once when I went over there. I will never, ever be the same.
It's horrifying, folks. I can guarantee.
I'm not even sure what kind of a wide-angle lens had to be used to capture it all.
Satellite.
I was going to ask about the poster in the green room with Walt with his cowboy hat and his boots and nothing else.
Hey, I was young. I needed the money.
He was channeling his inner Cartman. You spec my forte!
For a body shaving, apparently.
It was a lot of nair, believe me.
Well, let's move into into podcasting, and we can always bounce back into photography if something pops in your head. But we ran across each other because of a niche market that has actually grown exponentially even since Walt and I first stumbled into the door, and it's the Movies by Minutes community. And you were there for nearly at the beginning. Oh,
technically, I was third gen. The podcast that I still have yet to finish is third generation. It started during the third generation. You had your Star Wars Minute, and then you had like the next generation out, the Indiana Jones Minutes and the Aliens and the other big franchises. And then in the third generation, when it started being nothing little films like Better Off Dead, that's where we popped up. But I was listening to Star Wars Minute from about minute 30 on. About daily, starting at about minute 30, which I don't know if that means anything to a lot of your listeners. They listen to the Wilder Ride, so maybe they do know what Movies by Minutes is, mostly.
I think a lot of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of them have carried over from our first two seasons when we did Young Frankenstein a minute at a time and Blazing Saddles a minute at a time.
Yeah, so we're talking like 8 or 9 years back now when this started, Pete and Alex?
Yeah.
From the Star Wars Minute?
Yeah, and see, we're only starting season 4, so technically we're only just 3 years into being part of the group. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And you did Better Off Dead first. That was your first Movie by Minute, right?
First Movie by Minute, yeah.
So what inspired you to do that movie? I mean, obviously it's an awesome movie. It's one of my favorite movies, but what inspired you to do Better Off Dead?
Well, I was listening to Star Wars Minute and Indiana Jones Minute and all the other by minute podcasts. And in those days, I was keeping up with all of them daily. And I erroneously thought that this would be easy and fun.
Right.
So I called up my friend Jason and I said, this would be easy and fun. Let's do this. And he said, yeah. And I said, you pick the movie. And he said, Better Off Dead. And off we went.
And
set up a
were you a fan of Better Off Dead before?
Yeah, pretty much. I like One Crazy Summer more. But Better Off Dead, yeah, I like it.
One Crazy Summer is so good.
Right, we kind of think of that as part of the trilogy.
Yeah.
It'd be like One Crazy Summer. Actually, in our minds, this isn't official canon or anything, but and they're different, and they're played by different actors and actresses, and they have different names, and they're not really canon. But we kind of see a through line of movies that starts with Better Off Dead, and then continues in One Crazy Summer, and then the next movie is How I Got Into College. And then ends with the fourth movie in that series would be High Fidelity.
All fantastic. And I could see how you could see how he is sort of a next generation, like sort of evolution in each of those movies playing those characters.
Right. The High Fidelity guy definitely started out as the Better Off Dead guy. And that is definitely how he got into college, even though the main character was Laura Flynn Boyle. It's like, spiritually, they all are just kind of like the same series to us when we're thinking about it.
That makes sense.
And we talk about that frequently on the show, too.
Well, and for those of our listeners who don't know what we're talking about, the Movie by Minute world, we break down movies and we take 1 minute of that movie, and that's one episode of our podcast. So as y'all broke down Better Off Dead, did you find that you liked the movie better, or did it become cumbersome? What did you find?
By the way, that sound effect of taking the cap off and putting it back on is going to be awesome to deal with in post.
I'm so sorry. And that's why I'm trying to do it while other people are talking.
That's fine. You only did it a couple of times while you were talking. I looked down and I was like, oh, shit, I guess we're going to leave that sound in.
I'm sorry. Well, everybody should know that I am 3 fingers down in a Johnny Walker Black Label as we're having this interview.
See,
so maybe it can just be part of the recording.
You know what? It's all good.
It has become merged with my soul in a way that can't be separated from me anymore, to answer that question. Better Off Dead, and how I feel about it. It is just it's just a part of my life now. I'm an expert. I'm one of the 2 world's foremost experts on Better Off Dead.
It's funny you say that, because I think that Alan and I have become 2 of the world's foremost experts on Young Frankenstein. I think there are a lot of experts out there on Blazing Saddles, but I think that we are now in the upper echelon of those experts.
Yeah, well, I listened to the show, and I agree.
Well, I was going to add to this. The one thing that I've always enjoyed is trivia. My wife and I go to trivia nights. We enjoy trivia. And how much you think you know about a movie until you really start looking in each minute and really paying attention, and then you start doing the research and finding out, oh, this was not the shot they were supposed to do, or I got the shooting script and it was never supposed to look this way, and they changed it on the fly. And you learn so much by just doing that deep dive.
You aren't kidding. The most shocking thing that I've learned so far, as we are going into week 10 of recording the Time Bandits Minute, which will be released in 2022 probably, is that there's no mention anywhere in the script about the time doors. If you know the movie, that's this black void that opens up with a blue fiery sort of outline around it and makes this great noise, and people jump into it to go to a different time period. Not mentioned at all. The word time door doesn't exist in the script.
It's almost a character in the movie, though.
But it's not in the script.
And it doesn't exist in the script whatsoever.
That's crazy.
And as we're looking at it, it's like, oh, these could all be inserts the way that they're shot. Just later on, they're like, we need a time door. And built a quick set.
How the hell are we going to get to the next scene?
Shooting, and had them just jump over things.
Wow, that is crazy.
But I love learning stuff like that. I love learning about how a script may have been banged out, like we did with Young Frankenstein, and you guys with Time Bandits. The first Terry Gilliam sort of project as a director, and seeing all the Easter eggs, because you never would have been able to slow down a movie in the cinema the day it came out. So all that stuff you knew was there. They knew it was there, but who was ever going to catch it all? Now you're freeze framing, you're digitally pushing in, you're seeing all of the stuff that Terry Gilliam probably was thinking, this is really cool, but no one's ever going to appreciate it. And here we are, 40 years later going, oh no, we appreciate it now.
We appreciate it now. Put all
at
this
a
stuff
very
in
granular level.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And I think, and this is a question I have for you and have had for some of the other Movie by Minute folks, is when you do break it down like that, we're breaking it down as a labor of love. Nobody's come along and said, hey, we'll give you thousands of dollars to go break this down.
But we wouldn't turn it
down. We do
it
because we like the movie. What's that?
But we wouldn't turn it down.
We would not turn it down. And I offer my deepest appreciation for anybody who wants to write that check. But we do it because we love the movies. And I think that when we start breaking them down, if the movie wasn't a labor of love, that becomes evident very quickly.
It does, yeah. Yeah. Boy, I don't know what it would be like to be stuck on a movie that sucks. And I don't mean sucks like Mandy sucks, because even that is art in its suckiness. I mean, really just a slop together piece of movie that you might happen to love, but the guy put it together for a paycheck.
I will make a comment here in a little while about a movie that I'm going to review that I would rather be shot with fire ants than review a minute at a time. And so I can imagine that it would be really painful.
Oh
wow.
I'm looking forward to see about Crystal Skull.
I know, it's a god-awful mess.
I'm looking forward to see if we've hit the new low, because I thought we had it with Killer Donuts.
This makes Killer Donuts look like Better Off Dead.
Wow.
Never even heard of
That's
it.
coming up.
This movie's a piece of shit.
Okay.
But, Curtis, is there a particular genre that you like working in as you do the Movie by Minute, or have you found that you...
Films of the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or are there all kinds of movies that you enjoy doing it with?
Well, here's my deal with Movies by Minutes. The fact that it is a labor of love for almost everybody is why they're so good. There are some real expert podcasters out there, the Flophouse and I guess I'm kind of blanking on other ones, but there's some real good, talented comedians that do podcasts out there and review movies, and they're great. But
sure.
But the Movies by Minute community in particular is just full of people that love the movie, or really hate it if you're Professor Black. But
right.
It's people that are passionate about the movie, and even terrible movies that are outside of I shouldn't say terrible, even movies that are outside of what I would normally like, something like Love Actually or whatever. That guy from England, I'm forgetting his name right now, I'm very sorry. I've only podcasted with him 3 different times, so you'd think I'd remember his name off the top of my head, is so passionate about what he does that it's a good thing to listen to. It's just a good genre to listen to, and therefore the answer is I don't really have a preference for genre of movie. I kind of have a preference of like podcasters. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like I would follow you guys anywhere. I would follow Rick and Julia anywhere. The Indiana Jones Minute guys. That guy that does the Alien movie, John Ingle or whatever, and Pete
the Rocky
Alex,
Minute guys.
Whatever any of these people do, I would just go listen to them. I'd listen to them talk about how to make cheesecake just because they're good podcasters,
Well, it's ironic that you say that, because next week Alan and I are going to be talking about how to make cheesecake. So it'll be a 2-hour special.
I better start doing some research.
One of my jobs along the road of my life was actually working in a factory that made cheesecake.
Oh my God. So, I can't tell if you're being serious right now.
Cheesecake, 1 minute at a time.
I am, and it's painful to even remember.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't bring that up because I knew that about you.
It was not a cheesecake factory. It was a factory that made cheesecake.
Wow.
And it was
Folks,
horrible.
you can't write these jokes at home. Don't try it.
I can't eat cheesecake anymore.
Really?
So, just looking at me, you would never believe that, but I eat other kinds of cake, not cheesecake.
Yeah, I would have never put it past you. Walt, cheesecake?
Terrible.
Well, have you seen Walt? Yeah, of course.
Terrible experience. So, but one thing that I really like is that you can almost live vicariously through other people, because so many people are doing these now that I love raising my hand and saying, well, I'm not going to do Close Encounters a minute at a time, but somebody else is, so I get to go be a guest on their show.
Right.
Or even if I just get to listen to it. Tierney is awesome. And
she is.
Being
She's
able to
fantastic.
just listen to her talk about Close Encounters, I'm like on minute 30 on that one right now. My goal for this summer is to catch back up and have listened to every Movies by Minute podcast that exists.
Really? That's some effort, because there's a lot out there.
I kept up pretty good until about 3 years ago when it really started to explode.
Right.
Yeah,
And it
there's
was
like 190 of them now.
Well, but
And it was like, oh my God, these guys at 2001 are great, but they talk about every minute for an hour and a half.
Now,
It's going to take me a while to get there. I'm not going to be able to keep up daily.
That's where, and what you said is important to keep in mind. There are really good podcasters out there, but if it doesn't connect with you, that's okay. Go to the next one. That doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're not connecting with you. There are so many different styles, voices, the way they even approach the material. I honestly believe that this would be a fun experiment, is to just randomly pick any five people that are in the Movies by Minutes community, give them the same movie, and I think you would have 5 completely different podcasts.
Yeah, there's a lot of thing that goes on in our community about being afraid to do a movie that someone else has done. And I never say it out loud because I'm not going to make waves in this community that I love, but like I don't think it would be bad. It would be completely different. There'd be some facts that are the same. But
right.
People approach these movies completely differently.
Well, yeah, and I think everybody would arrive at doing that movie for a different reason.
Yeah.
Well, but the personalities, well, like you said, my favorite podcast, it doesn't matter. They could be, and what you said, Curtis, they could be talking about anything. If I feel like we're just hanging out in a bar somewhere and it just feels so natural and it's conversational and they're having a great time, that's infectious to me. And so I start having a good time and I want to all of a sudden go, oh crap, this was 3 years ago. I wish I was sitting down with them right now.
Right.
You know, that's when I know I've picked a show I like.
Well, that's kind of one of the thrilling things too, is the fact that, you go to a Green Day concert and you fantasize that you might be able to get up and play lead guitar with Billy Joe, like with Movies by Minutes. That could happen.
Right.
You could just reach out and go, hey, regular guy who's just a cemetery lawnmower in his other life, can I be on a podcast with you? And they'll go, yes.
Well, Walt, how many times have we talked about the difference between radio, my other business, versus podcasting? The radio business is, you don't listen to anybody, only listen to us. We want all the ratings. We want all the listeners. We need to have all the cume. Podcasters is like, hey, man, everybody, let's spread the love. And I love it because they're so willing to be helpful and support each other and say, hey, come on in, talk about your show while you're on my show. And then, hopefully you'll reciprocate. And it's such a really cool dynamic.
It is. It really is. And it's amazing how just that non-competitive spirit is such a benefit to that group, that everybody wants everybody to do well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if anyone has made this observation to you guys yet, or if you've had this conversation privately with anyone, but the podcast community is really chock full of Generation Xers.
Yeah,
we're all about 50, it seems like.
The ones who can go past 10 episodes.
So what podcasting seems to be is just a replacement for when we were in our 20s starting rock bands. It's everybody had a rock band when we were 20, and now everyone's got a podcast. Same generation.
Right. Or we're the ones who were like, I really could see myself in radio one day, but then we wanted to pay our bills instead.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was me.
Wait.
I was in this band, and I was listening to talk radio, and I thought I could do that. I could be on talk radio. So I went and applied a couple places, and I ran the board at a Christian music station. And it was like, oh no, this is just a lot of paperwork sitting around filling stuff out when I did commercials to verify it and crap. And the talking is, I need precisely 3 minutes and 23 seconds here between this thing and this thing. And this is the pit, screw this. So I started my own podcast, basically.
Right. Between Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith for the 18th time today.
Right. So I kind of just started my own podcast called The What I Wish I Didn't Know Show. And I did it on tape. I did it on cassette tape, and I edited it with 2 tape decks going back and forth and do a third one. And I would play one bit and play another bit and do drops and everything. And then distributed that with zines. Do you guys remember zines? People would make magazines on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper and staple them, and it'd be all poetry and stories and news and whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I was distributing it wasn't called a podcast back then. I was distributing my show, this What I Wish I Didn't Know show, with zines, just stapled into the cover of the magazine for people to listen to on cassette. And then in 97 switched over to CD because we were getting high tech.
Mm-hmm. Well, so being kind of the Gen Xer, and you're right, I think the Gen Xers have I gotta say this the right way. There are a lot of younger people that get into the podcasting world, but sometimes I think you have to have lived maybe a little bit to have more references, understand the texture of living a little bit. Because sometimes I think what I love about the shows is the things I'm hearing from people are the same things me and my friends talk about, and the things we talked about when the movie first came out, and we still talk about to this day. So there's that sense of it's a communal shared experience happening in the podcast.
We're rehaving those conversations, but we're recording for posterity this time.
So my question to you was how
drunk on somebody's trunk on a dirt road.
So my question to you is how cool has it been for somebody like you who started with the cassette era, seeing to where we're now, digital, worldwide, you can have listeners literally around the world just by publishing something.
I have loved talk radio my whole life, and because of that, it means that in my younger years, I listened to and was into a lot of politics. And then, people like Art Bell started coming around or started getting popular, and you could get into weird stuff. And then, who was that guy that always had the Flash Your Boobs Friday? He started also doing like wine shows, so you could start listening to wine shows and shows about beer, and then from there, it kind of became what we called internet radio, mm-hmm. and internet radio opened it up further so that we could start having more niche topics to start talking about. I've just enjoyed the hell out of it all the way. Like, you can now find a podcast about just about anything that you're interested in listening to.
True.
Literally, when I first started finding podcasts about podcasting, I thought, okay, we've got every subject covered now.
Nice.
And there are a ton of them. There are a bunch of them out there.
Yeah.
So
that's bottomless.
But you're right.
Like,
yeah. Whatever your sports team is, whatever magazine you use to read, like all of that. There are podcasts about Mad Magazine. There are podcasts literally about everything.
Well, that's one of my most fun things to do. That's a stupid way to say that, but you get to have this communal experience now when you're watching a TV show. Like I just finished watching Twin Peaks, and one of the great thrills of that was being able to, after watching an episode, go back and listen to a podcast about it. And then if I didn't like that, I could listen to another podcast about it. And you can just really take these deep dives, and these people become friends in your head.
No, seriously,
like,
there is
a
but there's a phenomenon. We talk about it in talk radio. You talk about being a fan of talk radio. If you're good at it, and you can make a living at it, you're living in people's heads. You're existing in the listeners' heads, and you're giving them thoughts and ideas, your view. And so if you start to relate, you start feeling a kinship because you're relating to the thoughts and the ideas, and those are powerful things. And that's why the listenership is sometimes more powerful than viewership, because it's an active experience. You're having to actively listen, not passively watch.
Right. You're not, even if you are on your phone while you're listening is still completely 100% taken up by it. You can't listen to three different things at once. You can look at three different things at once.
I can't, with a podcast, I can do mindless things. I don't want to miss something. So I can mow the lawn, I can work on sanding furniture, or, sweeping or mopping. I can do like house chores. But I can't edit. I hear people like, "Oh yeah, I like having a podcast on while I'm editing." I'm like, how do you do that? I can't even.
No.
I'm barely focusing on what's in front of me.
That.
You got to focus on what's in front of me. Well, it's funny you say mowing, because one of the other things I do, I've got a lot of different income streams. One of the other things I do is I'm a caretaker at the local cemetery, And so I've got 5 hours of just windshield time where it's nothing but, noise canceling headphones on, and I'm just listening to podcasts all day. So that's one of the things. When I say I'm keeping up with the Movies by Minutes community, I don't think that's something a lot of people can do. But I've got enough time to keep up.
There's no way I can do it.
No, but you know what? I mean, every Saturday for me is catch up time for the shows that I'm interested in. And honestly, there are some I will go back at some point and pick them up, but we have to pick and choose. There's just so many, and I hate it. I wish I could listen to them all, but sometimes it's just the movie. If it's the movie I want to hear, because I want to know, what are they going to tell me that I think I already know, but maybe I don't. And to me, that's fun. And then being on, like Walt said earlier, as we start to kind of reach the end of the interview portion here, being on the show, when you guys invited me on Time Bandits, it forced me to go back. I say forced. I mean, I willfully went to go rewatch Time Bandits. And then after being on with you, I went and rewatched it again, because now I'm like, I should have watched this even more carefully.
I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing.
So I had a blast. And so thank you for inviting us to be on your show. That's going to be coming out, like you said, maybe 2022. Hopefully earlier. I would love it to be earlier, but I also know you're trying to manage. It's a lot. You got to edit, you got to get it all put together, and you got to do every minute of the movie.
Well, and I mean, this is how my day breaks down. I wake up, I do 2 hours of news, then I do 2 hours of photography, then I do 5 hours of mowing, then I do 2 hours of podcasting. And I think a year out is about the right amount of time.
Well, and I think that one of the things that I've found is that there are some folks that are putting them out who just kind of sit in front of the mic, talk, and put it out. But then there are a lot of other people who want to put out a really professional product as best they can. And so doing that while you're also trying to make a living and take care of a family and do all the other things that we do in life, that becomes a big challenge.
Well, that's kind of the thing, too. That's part of it, too, as far as that long lead time goes. I know you guys are, or at least Alan is, a professional radio personality.
I will use that term loosely. Not an expert, a professional. I get paid.
How about an expert?
That's right.
I send all of my tracks off to be mastered by someone else who's just good at mastering, because I believe in just hiring people to do the things they're good at rather than me having to be good at everything. And then I get it back, and then I start editing for content so that it can be tight. And a typical podcast will be, it'll take 3 times as long to edit as it does to record it.
Yep.
Because I want it to be good. I don't want some piece of crap out there with my name on it.
Yeah, every time Walt goes on a 2-hour marathon, I'm thinking, there's 6 hours of my life I'm not getting back.
Yeah, don't get me down a rabbit trail.
I'd rather have a good 7-minute chunk of podcast rather than some rambly 30-minute thing or some 3-hour thing where by the end of it, you're just doing it because you love them, not because you actually like what you're hearing.
Well, and I think that one neat thing about podcasts that you don't have with radio is that a podcast you can go and pick up 5 years from now.
True.
And listen to it again. It's not normally,
unless it's a current event podcast, but yeah.
Right. I was going to say, but for the ones that we're doing, they're a little bit timeless. And as long as you're not telling, Obama jokes or Trump jokes or Biden jokes, you can, have something that is built to last. And so I think that's really cool.
I don't think any podcasts that came out during the Trump era are going to remain evergreen. I think everybody had a strong opinion one way or the other, and that made it into everybody's podcast for the last 3 years at least.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, we tried really hard. We try to keep the politics.
Here's what's so funny. We learned from watching the evolution of Mel Brooks movies. We realized that his later movies didn't stick around or were as funny because they were way too topical for the time they were released. It's the earlier movies that try to be more universal and maybe dealt with more of the human condition that we're still watching as if it's the first time.
Well, and I learned that about podcasting from actually Rick and Julia Ingram. They had a conversation once. I don't know if I was on the show and it was an aside or what it was, but they were talking about consciously trying to keep it evergreen rather than bringing any current events into it whatsoever. Not even saying, hey, it's Friday. Are you ready for the 5th episode this week? Just completely making it so that the end user experience can just be to drop in and not have to know what happened in 2011 in order to appreciate what they're talking about. Yeah.
No, and it's important there's nothing wrong with being topical. Just understand that your episodes may just eventually stop being listened to after a certain period of time.
Right, because it's like, who cares about?
No, I mean it's a trick in radio. If your show is going to be broadcast syndicated or it's going to be replayed later, you don't say it's 11 o'clock. You say it's 5 minutes past the top of the hour. So that way,
nice, yeah.
well, whenever they're playing it, it's 5 minutes past the top of the hour. Who cares what hour it is? I always make sure we say, come back next week. That's it. Come back next week. We have no idea what day. Just come back next week. Just come back. Just please.
Please come back.
All right.
Well,
so
it was a delight being interviewed by you guys. I was kind of freaked out when you asked me to be on the show because I was just thinking like the last show that I listened to that you guys put out before I came on the interview was with a Navy SEAL. And I'm like, I was in the Navy and I tried out for the SEALs and I didn't make it. It's like, how am I going to compare to that amazing interview?
You know what? Everybody's got a cool story to tell as long as you ask the right questions. So I think it's been great having you, and I hope you'll hang out with us till the end. I do want to
absolutely
before we move on to our
crack wise with you about current events.
Cool. Well, before we get to our horrible movie that our listeners made Walt watch, Curtis, for anybody who's listening right now and they want to, maybe they're in your area, they want to learn a little bit more about your studio or getting in touch with you, or maybe listening to your podcast. Give us the breakdown. How do they find you?
Oh, okay. Well, this is cheesy, and it definitely does put me in 2021. But just go to my link tree if you know how to use that. It's the word link and then tr.ee linktree / my name CurtisBloes. Sounds like Bloes. Looks like Bloes. Curtis Blaze.
I was going to say, don't tell me it sounds like Bloes, because then I completely screwed it up at the beginning.
No. When people mispronounce my name, I just go with it. I'm like, yeah, Bloes. That link just has a link to every place I have photos, every guest episode I've done on every podcast, everywhere, all of the podcasts I do, everything. Everything I've ever been involved with that exists on the internet, except for the stuff that I don't want you to know about.
Gotcha. Excellent.
Is at that place.
So all your social media links, if they're still current whenever they're listening to this episode, they'll all be there.
Yeah. Well, everything. If I change, that's where it will be, because that's the one place that I keep updated everywhere so that it's easy to find me.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're going to hang out with us, and we get to now move into a subject that, hey, Walt, this is all your fault. You said we wanted to bring in a new feature to the show. You were like, there's so many bad movies. I like bad movies. We're going to break you, apparently, of that. Because you actually put out the survey in our listeners group. So, folks, if you go to the Wilder Ride on Facebook and then you join the group, you have to be on the inside. You have to be part of the membership. You put out a survey. And so what was the lucky movie that you got to watch this week? For a little segment we like to call
God, what is this? Stop it! I didn't get me out of this hell!
Okay, so what I watched this week, I'm not even going to call a movie. It was called Space Trucker Bruce. And
by the way,
this was a 2000.
I voted for that.
I know you did, and I hate you now. This was made in 2014 by people who apparently have never talked to other people before. The summary on IMDb says, in a future where Earth has colonized the solar system, a lonely trucker hauling 20,000 tons of hog fat from Earth to the Titan station picks up an easily bored hitchhiker. Together, they struggle to survive an encounter with a mysterious dark object.
Sounds good, actually.
You would think so, right? I mean, it sounds like
I would watch that movie.
A cross between Star Trek and Twilight Zone.
Yeah. So I think that the person who wrote that was a lot more talented than the people who put this movie together. The director and writer was Anton Dorian. He is also a I was going to say star of this movie. He's also in this movie as a main character. Here's the problem. There are no enemies or anything like that. There's no tension among the characters. There's no excitement. Nothing interesting happens. And it's really just kind of two guys riding a spaceship through space. And it's really boring. They have no adventures. There's no humanity to this movie. It's not humorous. It is a very dull 1 hour and 27 minute something. It's not good.
I was an over-the-road trucker for a while, and this sounds exactly accurate.
Yes. Okay, so this would be like leaving, say, Tampa at 8 o'clock at night and driving straight through to Phoenix, Arizona with no stops. Your CB radio's broken, and it's night the entire time. That is this movie in a capsule.
All right.
There are a couple of positive references to necrophilia and an attempted sexual assault that they put in a positive light that really is enough to ruin the movie for everybody, but nobody makes it that far because it's like an hour in and everybody's given up by that point. So nobody knows that that's in there to complain about it. So it is the worst acting I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, it's barely even acting. It's really like two guys just having a conversation and filming it and then throwing it out there as a movie.
Huh.
The major character, there is a major character that is not introduced until over an hour into this movie.
Into an hour and 27-minute film.
Into an hour and 27-minute film. And you never really figure out why she is introduced.
Female, we need a hot chick. No?
They ran out of script.
Yes.
They had to figure out how to make it 11 minutes longer.
Or at least 6.
Hey, I've seen every Neil Breen movie, man.
But the person who's brought in is not, like, she isn't sexualized, or she isn't really even a character. She's just kind of there. And they try to make her a bigger deal. All I can figure is, like, maybe this guy started dating her while they were filming it, and she really wanted to be in it, so they brought her in as a character. And, you know, and then the movie is peppered throughout with Star Wars quotes, but they're never really put in a way that makes them at all relevant to the conversation or to the movie. They just kind of throw them in because they know that people like Star Wars. So they throw them into the conversation. And the second character keeps going, oh, that's from that movie Star Wars that we watched.
Oh, so not even thinly veiled as if you would have to know. They're actually telling you.
Oh, no. Now, the odd thing about that is they actually show them watching Star Wars, but it's none of the quotes that you're hearing and none of the audio coming from that is from Star Wars. It's some random...
Well, they couldn't get the rights from Lucas, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm very surprised. I'm surprised that George wouldn't want Star Wars
at this point.
Well,
when did this come out?
2014.
Oh, yeah, no, it was still Lucas, I think. I don't think Disney bought him at that point.
Well, even if it was, Disney would have
had issue,
committed suicide over knowing that it was even mentioned in here.
No, so, I'm sure they would have done a huge cease and desist.
Yes. However, one great thing that everybody can be happy about is that they do set the stage for a Space Trucker Bruce 2.
Oh, excellent.
And hopefully that never gets made. So,
all right, well, before we wrap up on this, were any good swag? A lot of times you say the T-shirt design or the poster design at least was worth looking at.
I got to be honest, I was so disgusted by the end of this that I didn't even look. And, you know, usually I'll even go to IMDb and say, hey, at least this person was in something else. I cannot say this in this movie, except for one of the actors is going to be in a movie that is, I think, going to be released this summer called 1.5 Days. And he was also in a movie called Girl, Yeti, and a Spaceship. So I don't know. For that, I just had pretty much given up. I hope that I never see any of these people ever again. I hope that that they move on to something completely different, like selling truck insurance or something, selling hog fat, because they do not belong in entertainment. They're two of the most boring people I've ever seen anywhere in my life, and I hope that I hope that they're miserable knowing that they put this movie out.
Walt, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Your choices were Space Trucker Bruce, Airplane versus Volcano, and Planet of the Sharks.
Right.
Which one do you wish would have been voted on?
Airplane versus Volcano.
Before you knew any of this, Airplane versus Volcano.
I was really hoping that's the direction people would go.
Have you seen any of these movies?
No, I had not.
So you're watching them blind.
This is totally blind.
So as the week wore on and Space Trucker pulled ahead by a massive, massive amount, what did you think it was going to be about?
You know, I kind of had an inkling that it was going to be about a guy named Bruce who had a spaceship and hauled stuff around the universe. I figured there'd be some sort of adventures that he ended up going on, something entertaining that happened to him along the way.
BJ and the Bear, but in space.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know, what's so funny, the reason I voted for it is I thought it was going to be an inside joke about Bruce Campbell. We were going to have like ice pirates, but it was going to be with a Bruce Campbell flair.
Oh, nice.
But it wasn't.
It was not. I would say for anybody who is listening to this and thinking, well, it can't be as bad as Walt says, so I'm going to give it a shot. Don't.
I'm gonna.
Do not do that.
I'm watching
But if you do, let us know.
Where do I find it?
It is now on Amazon Prime, but you have to pay extra for it.
Oh, that makes it even
better. So I would put it on your Amazon Prime watch list, and when it pops up free, don't watch it then. Wait until they say, we will pay you $5 to watch it, then watch it.
Wait, where's that plan?
I don't know.
I could do that.
I'm just saying, don't ever watch this, is really where it
that bad. All right, well.
What I would do, if you're gonna make the mistake of watching it, I would say set an alarm on your watch, and in 10 minutes, decide if you want to continue.
So then, how does this work, guys? Does Airplane versus Volcano and Planet of the Sharks move on to the next round, and you pick a third movie, and everybody votes?
Not yet.
Not yet. I think what I'm going to do is I've got probably 15 more movies on my list of potentials. I'm going to circle back to Airplane versus Volcano at some point. I may do it next week because it looks like it's a really good bad movie, and it looks like it's really worth talking about. So,
but we did talk about this. We didn't want to make it look like we were driving the same 2 or 3 choices every week to get the one we wanted. We wanted to be 3 or 4 different every week.
Absolutely. And, you know, one thing I didn't realize is there is an abundance of really crappy shark movies out there, to the point that I really can't put 3 up there without having a shark movie. So yeah, I've got a lot to deal with in the shark world. We did a six-headed shark a couple weeks ago. There's also 5-headed shark attack, 3-headed shark attack. So the multi-headed shark attack movie genre is a rich landscape. There's a lot of good stuff out there to watch. So, there's a lot to watch.
There's an abundance of stuff to watch. It may not be good.
Exactly. So,
all right. Well, let's go ahead and tuck that one in and get ready for some crazy news. And we know it's got to be true because we read it online. Let's head over to a segment we like to call
It's No Bullshit.
Walt.
Well, yeah. So some of this is really, but this is real. I mean, we know this is real because it's actual news. KWCH in Wichita reports that a Wichita mom tells her daughter she's been shot as an April Fool's joke, and haha, joke's on you. She gets arrested.
Look up idiot in the dictionary. You know what you'll find?
A picture of me?
No! The definition of the word idiot, which you are.
So, Wichita, Kansas, the Wichita Police Department arrested 58-year-old Arnetha Wills of Wichita on charges of unlawful request for emergency service assistance in connection with an April Fool's Day prank.
Oops.
Police said around 8:30 a.m. on Thursday, officers were called out to a shooting at a home at the 4800 block of East Arlene.
Okay, look, here's a tip. You could have that gag go all the way through until such time as you actually involve emergency personnel.
Yeah, once you hit that 911 button, things have gone
Suddenly
awry.
you use the words, oh, the shit got real.
Yes. Yes. You gotta pull the plug before 911 gets called. Multiple officers responded to the call along with the Wichita Fire Department and Sedgwick County EMS. Officers surrounded the home, blocked streets, and attempted to make contact with anyone inside. After they were not able to contact anyone, they entered the home but did not find anyone. Through further investigation, officers learned that Willis had called her daughter, claiming to be shot as an April Fool's Day joke. Willis was located in Derby, Kansas, and arrested by Derby police without incident. The investigation is ongoing, and the case will be presented to the Sedgwick County District Attorney's Office.
It's no bullshit.
Okay, so I'm confused. Who called then the cops? The daughter?
I think the daughter called 911.
Because the mom sold it so well, she didn't expect the daughter to call. Oh, okay, now that makes a little more sense.
Yes, so the daughter is convinced mom's been shot, so she called 911.
But the daughter wasn't like a street over. They were like in a completely different town.
Yeah, no, she wasn't anywhere nearby. So she called 911 and said, hey, Ma has been shot.
Mom did not think the joke through all that well.
Get the meat wagon out there and pick her carcass up.
Something very similar happened in Ohio. A guy was at a factory. He was working his job, and he thought it'd be fun to call his sister and say that there's an active shooter in the plant.
Oh my gosh!
And the police and SWAT responded as you would expect.
Right. Yeah. There's certain things there's certain trigger words that you just don't use because they've got to show up. You know, there was a bomb threat that was called in our town, not that like last week, and it was because someone thought that there was Arabic writing on a car that looked parked weird, and so they called the police saying, "I'm afraid that there's a bomb in this car." It turns out there wasn't. It was just, and everybody's laughing about it, but the cops have to show up because what if it was? Right? You have to show up.
That's why
you don't fool around with stuff like that.
Is a crime.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and just so you know, folks, when you make a call like that and say that there's a shooting or an active shooter, the police lose humor very fast, but they show up with loaded guns. So a lot can go awry in this situation.
Yeah, you're flirting with things you probably ought not flirt with.
Yes, this is not a prank. This is stupidity.
All right. Well, I've got one here. And, we all know that species evolve. I mean, whatever your personal beliefs, things do change, adapt. Well, you've all been around toxic people, right? We all know a handful of maybe those people maybe in our lives. Maybe we're trying to figure out how to kick them out of our lives.
I may know one or two.
Did you know that in the future, you might need to steer more clear of toxic people? Because if evolution plays out as one researcher has it, you could literally become toxic.
He slimed me.
A new study published by the journal Proceedings in the National Academy of Sciences has found an interesting little tidbit about human genes. It turns out we have the potential to evolve into having venomous bites.
Ooh, awesome.
I want that.
Cool?
I want that power.
Granted, the likelihood of it happening is unlikely, but who knows? Maybe some kind of I don't know, maybe we need to spend a global cataclysm where something's going on that has us all doing something that we normally wouldn't do. But that would never happen.
No, that's not going to happen in our lifetime.
Essentially, we have the building blocks in place. Now it's up to evolution to take us there, said Agnish Baru, a PhD student with the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. So here's the study. Venomous animals are nothing special when you look at the nature. Any number of insects, arachnids, and reptiles have venomous bites. Some are strong enough to even harm humans. Even some primates, which I didn't know, by the way, can have venom. The slow loris, which lives in Southeast Asia, secretes a substance in its bite that causes painful swelling, and if you happen to be particularly allergic, it could actually kill you. But the new study on which Baru worked didn't actually study the toxins that various animals drool, spit, and inject from parts of their mouth. Instead, they looked at the evolutionary structure behind how that came to be, calling those housekeeping genes. So basically, the research that Brew and her colleagues did produced some surprising results. They all discovered that the genes responsible for venomous bites are common among all aminotes. Now, we all know our biology, right? But if you don't, here's what an aminote is. Any animal that fertilizes their eggs internally or will lay eggs on land, which includes birds, reptiles, and some mammals. So most interestingly, humans have that same genetic structure. They have been able to produce some results with human salivary glands that secrete a protein that actually already now starts to break down your food. So it's just a matter of how do you get it to kind of boost up a little bit.
It's no bullshit.
Nobody right now has a, quote, toxic bite, but according to research, sometime in the future, careful for that toxic person. They may be more toxic than you know.
Insert ex-wife joke here.
But I'm bummed.
Yeah, that's pretty frightening.
Ex-wife. Guess I'm glad she didn't want to bite me. Or nibble. Or whatever.
Yeah, boy, that's pretty scary. All right, so speaking of irritating people and things, Eyewitness News ABC 7 has this one for us. Neighbors irritated by mystery shrieking noise coming from Brooklyn luxury high-rise. Try to say that 5 times fast.
You couldn't even say it 1 time slow.
Yeah, Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, New York, WABC. A luxury condo building in Brooklyn is irritating neighbors after it's been giving off a shrill whistling sound, piercing the relative quiet of the neighborhood. Some neighbors have compared the sound coming off the building at 347 Henry Street to nails on a chalkboard, and it can be heard for blocks. It's sort of a whistling noise with crescendos into high-pitched screeches, Amanda Nichols said. Others say it is a screaming dinosaur sound standing on top of the building, which, according to an engineer, is the source of the problem. We're hoping it gets fixed, that it's a permanent fix, not just a minor reduction in noise, Nichols said. Nichols is vice president of the Cobble Hill Neighborhood Association, which is working closely with the building's developer, Fortis Property Group. In December, many started hearing the screeching whistle, and some have pinpointed the source to the balconies. I think the wind goes through the bars, and this is what makes the noise, said Stan Newhart, a neighbor. A luxury high-rise sits on the corner of Henry and Pacific, not far from the water, creating the perfect storm for wind. In March, the builders tried a temporary fix, which literally went south. Fortis now tells Eyewitness News that it identified an adjustment to the balcony railings that we believed remediated the issue, and they went on to say that they were fully monitoring the situation.
After the change, the building was quoted as saying, "Y'all want some popsicles?" I got some in the basement. You just got to follow me down.
Well, they said, I don't think they want to jerry-rig something and have it fail because they also know that they're trying to sell the building, said Larry Guile. The sound varies depending on the wind speed and direction and is particularly irritating to a certain group of people who for months have been working from home. People are nervous as the building gets closer and closer to being finished that the issue is still persisting.
It's no bullshit.
You know, that's the same thing that happened when they made those tweaks to the Golden Gate Bridge. Remember that story?
Oh,
it was getting all those weird ghostly harmonic hums because of the ocean breezes coming through. That was wild.
That is crazy.
Yeah, harmonics, it's a thing, man. When to hear a building just start to hum, it's creepy.
It is definitely creepy.
All right, well, I've got the last news story. I'm not sure if anybody's bothered by bees. I know I'm not. I'm more worried about wasps and other things, but I like bees. But here's a story for folks. If you've got a bee issue, you've been warned. So you're driving your car. You suddenly notice out of the corner of your eye, or maybe you just hear a little sound, like a little zzz. There's a bee in your car. Well, that's enough to make most people freak out, right? But what happens when you look in the back seat and there's 15,000?
That's a lot of nuts!
That's a problem.
That is a problem.
That's the nightmare scenario that befell a New Mexico man when he returned to his vehicle after a brief shopping trip. A gigantic swarm of 15,000 bees.
Yikes.
Now, how did they get in the car? That's the mystery. But what's even more mysterious is how the man didn't even notice until he started driving away from the store that he went to. According to the story here from Audi.com, the man had made a short 10-minute trip to an Albertsons in Las Cruces, New Mexico. In the hot weather, he had left the window of the Buick open as he headed to the store. Now, once he was inside and got what he needed, he came back to the car, loaded his groceries in the trunk, got in the driver's seat, started the car, drove off. Then, in what will probably be one of the biggest WTF moments in his life, he noticed them, a swarm of thousands of bees all in the back seat. Now, the man quickly got out of the Buick, as any reasonable person would. He was left with a dilemma. What do you do with a car full of bees? So he called 911. And ironically, that a person, and I'll skip ahead because it's a little bit longer story. Apparently, a firefighter who was with the Las Cruces Fire Department was also a beekeeper by hobby. So the 911 operator knew the fire person was off duty, called him and said, "Hey, we got this strangest call about a guy claiming he's got thousands of bees in the back of his vehicle. Would you want to check it out?" Well, he immediately said, yeah, because the worry was that people would show up and start to kill the bees. So he said, "I'll do anything to keep people from killing bees." He quickly packed up his bee gear, headed over, and then after assessing the situation, knew what to do. He put on his beekeeper's helmet, his protective jacket, pulled out a completely empty hive that had been sprayed with lemongrass oil, which he said mimics the scent of a queen.
Are you the keymaster?
Johnson approached the vehicle with the box and spent the next half hour loading the bees. Finally, all 15,000 bees were safely stored in the box. He then relocated them to his property. He said he can't explain how the bees found that vehicle, but he said sometimes when a swarm gets so big, the queen may choose to relocate, and half the swarm goes, "Where the hell did the queen go?" And they get lost, and they're all looking for something else, and so they'll stay together. He said, ironically, a swarm like that, not in a hive, ends up being pretty docile, but it freaks out most people.
It's amazing. It's astounding. But it's no bullshit.
Yeah, you think?
Could you imagine getting in your car? You drove it, so who knows if they were in the car when he drove to the store, gets to the store, spends 10 minutes, gets into the to the trunk, opens the trunk, puts the groceries in the trunk, gets in the car, 10 minutes down the road and goes, "The hell's that noise?" 15,000 bees, Walt.
That
not
is
5,
a
not
lot
10.
of bees. Well, the beekeeper guy was like, "Hey, free bees." So,
Exactly. And because there was no queen. So they immediately, the lemongrass oil brought them right to his box. And he said within 30 minutes, he had all 15,000. And he said because they were all kind of aimlessly looking for a queen, they were docile. But, when you see that many bees literally climbing all over every inch of your back seat, I can understand where you'd get a little freaked out.
wow. That's a honey of a problem.
It is. Well done, sir. I'm not even going to try to top your dad pun.
Well, I sure don't think you could do worse.
As we're cruising to the last segment of the show, and we're so happy that Curtis Blaze is hanging out with us because now we get him to weigh in with us a little bit. Woo! It's our entertainment segment. It's a segment where we like to find out what are we watching, what are we reading, and what are we listening to. And Walt, I always go to you first, so let's start with the watching category. What has Walt Murray been watching this week and would recommend or not recommend outside of the movie review we just had?
Well, I actually have 3 really good ones. I finally finished WandaVision.
Okay.
And I think I texted you at the end of episode 3, and I was like...
Right, and I said, go watch 4 right now.
Holy crap. Yeah, because, 1 and 2, I was kind of like, okay, where is this going? 3, it starts to heat up, and at the end of 3, it is like coming off the launch pad.
Oh, ironically, at the end of 3, when a beekeeper comes up out of the sewer.
Yes. And explains why the beekeeper came up out of the sewer earlier. I mean, Alan, it is awesome. I mean, it is really amazing. It's, Marvel just being Marvel. But I really loved the show. And
wasn't it great seeing them both get a chance to really act?
It was. It was awesome. And the storytelling was just fantastic. It tied a whole bunch of stuff together. I mean, it was really, really great. And the nemesis, I don't want to give away who the nemesis was, but the nemesis in this is just tremendous. And the person who plays the nemesis, you kind of know as it's winding up, you kind of start getting hints, but it'll blow you away.
Well, and the thing is, they've even left threads for other heroes or characters and story arcs that may or may not make it in their next movies or maybe part of the next TV stuff. It's going to be all interconnected. I can't say enough stuff good about WandaVision. In fact, it made me go back and rewatch Age of Ultron, and it made Age of Ultron, for me, the second watch after WandaVision, a much better movie.
Wow.
I'm going to have to go rewatch that.
Yeah.
Oh, I never thought about rewatching that.
Yeah, if you Curtis, if you've watched WandaVision, well, first of all, have you watched WandaVision?
Yeah, we watched it we would stay up till midnight to watch it.
Okay, so you enjoyed it, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Try it out. I'd love to hear from you. Go rewatch Age of Ultron. It suddenly becomes so much clearer as a film, and all of a sudden, everything that was dropped in that felt out of place makes total sense.
Wow, I'll have to try that. Age of Ultron was not an easy movie to get through.
When I got done with Age of Ultron, I immediately went to Captain America: Civil War. I was like, I'm just going to watch, Avengers Light because it was just perfect. The next one to watch.
As we were going through the years, watching these Marvel movies come out, Age of Ultron is the one that for me kind of made me go, do I really need to see the next one, or can I wait for it to come out on video? And I waited for it to come out on video, and I was sorry, and I went back to watching them in the theater.
In fact, looking back at it, there were things when I rewatched the movie, I was like, I don't remember that. So it didn't make an impact the first time I saw it. I thought it was one of their first, not really duds. I thought Dark World was maybe more of the dud as far as Thor Dark World, but Age of Ultron was supposed to be like, here's Joss Whedon, he's going to do all this and blah, blah. It's like, it feels a little, But now I was blown away rewatching it. So I would highly suggest go do it and then let us know what you thought.
I'm definitely giving it a try.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do the same thing. Well, the other thing, of course, I started watching is Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I'm I'm caught up on that. So we're at episode 3 as of this week, and that is fantastic. Episode 3 got kind of beat up a little bit by people, but I think that this is a great storyline. And again, every time somebody starts beating up Marvel, they immediately kind of get put in their place because you turn around and have another great episode of something. So I highly recommend Falcon and the Snowman, Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Hey, talk about an 80s movie.
Yeah. But great show so far. Great characters. The writing's tremendous. So definitely watch that. And then Saving Private Ryan has been added to the Netflix lineup for this month. And I was reading today, this has basically given Saving Private Ryan a whole new life. And for a lot of people who've never been exposed to World War II movies and history, a lot of the younger kids are starting to watch it and are kind of like, wait, what's going on here? What is this all about? And getting a whole new view into World War II because of Saving Private Ryan. So check that out. If you've never watched it before, it is intense, but it is great. Great historical movie. A lot, from an accuracy standpoint, they went to great lengths to make sure that they did it well, and they do. And so check that out on Netflix.
Definitely one of my favorite World War II movies. As a biopic, Patton is still my favorite World War II movie, but Saving movie. Private Ryan is just, if you've got a good home theater, the audio, the painstaking work they went to make sure every weapon, every clip, every sound matched what it would have sounded like in World War II. It's just incredible.
Even guys who survived World War II said that the thing that was so shocking to them is that by the time D-Day came along, we had blown up so many of the ball bearing plants that the tanks didn't have ball bearings in them. And so they had a very distinctive grinding noise in their treads. And those guys were just shocked when they heard that in the theater. And it was like throwing them right back into combat because of that sound.
All right. I'll go very quickly through mine before we get to Curtis.
Oh, you should do mine second because I'm not ready for reviews. We'd be ending a week if I went third.
Oh, no, we're still going to do reading and listening, so don't worry.
Okay.
We got a lot to come.
Right. So for me, Falcon and the Winter Soldier goes without saying. I'm watching that as well. So you've already covered it. I finished Star Trek: The Next Generation. I finished Star Trek: The Original Series. Season 1. And I've started season 2. I've already watched the first episode of season 2. And I'm watching the remastered. And so far, I have really enjoyed the remastered version of Star Trek. The CG work, the CGI work, and the extra little tiny things, not a distraction. I'm into the story. I'm reminded how poorly some of the 1960s style of directing were, but I've loved the stories and really looking forward to continuing that journey back to watching all of the original Star Trek.
I'll be interested to hear what you think when you get to season 3, whether it holds up or not.
Okay. Curtis, we're going to do just watching. Is there anything you've been watching this past week? Anything you'd want to let our listeners know that's worth watching or maybe worth skipping?
Well, you brought it up. I've been listening to the podcast ABCDTOS, which is our friends over at the Indiana Jones Minute and Alien Minute and Star Wars Minute getting together and talking about episodes of Star Trek, the original series, in alphabetical order. So they hop in and out of the third season, back and forth between the first season and the third season. So I'm watching that every week. That's a regular one. This week was an episode that I thought was pretty good, but they didn't. I'm not going to remember the name of it because I'm kind of on the spot, but it was an episode about Bones being diagnosed with and this is a third season episode, Bones being diagnosed with a terminal disease, and they find a meteor that really has a spaceship inside of it, and Bones falls in love with like one of the leaders of the people inside the spaceship, and he decides to stay with them to finish out his final days. But it turns out that the meteor is going to crash into a planet and kill everybody that lives inside of it and everybody on the planet. So they have to figure that out. And then Bones doesn't. Then Bones just at the end, there's a reset. He just gets cured. Turns out it was fine.
Whoops.
Also, crazily enough, I have not seen The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But because of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I went back and watched The Falcon and the Snowman.
Did you really?
I really did. And you know what? It stands up pretty good. It's got some 80s moments. You know, the character, the way that they film things isn't quite as dramatic as it could be if it had been a 90s movie or a movie made today. It's not golden age cinematography, but it's pretty good. It really isn't too bad. It's about these two guys that are just kind of screwing around, and they decide that they could make some money selling American secrets to the Russians, and it just kind of follows their story. And it's less about the caper, and it's more about just them as characters, just being a couple of screw-ups doing this thing. And I think it's a true story. I think.
Yeah, it's based on a true story.
Yeah.
It's a true story.
Pretty good movie. I would go back and watch it if I was,
I think that's where Sean Penn really started to be recognized as being more than the Spicoli character in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, that there were some acting chops underneath.
Right. And, not a bad movie.
It's good.
What else am I watching? I just finished Twin Peaks: The Return. Early on this year, my wife and I decided, let's watch Twin Peaks, because we never have. We've always heard about it. Neither of us are really, what's his name? Who's the director? Neither of us are really David Lynch fans. It's always been, his movies are a little weird and hard to penetrate sometimes. But we went ahead and watched this movie, or this series, and we finished up the last episode this week, which... have either of you seen Twin Peaks: The Return?
No, my first question was going to be, I've never watched it either, but everybody keeps saying you should. So my question is, should I?
Yeah. I don't want you to be mad at me when you get done, though.
Yes,
I won't take it personally.
This is exactly the most accurate review I can give. You definitely should go watch it, and don't blame me. If you listen to me.
I take no responsibility here whatsoever.
It seems like the people who have recommended that show to me have also recommended other stuff that I really like. So I feel like I really should watch it. and that I'll enjoy it.
It is really good. It's not like Lost. You remember how Lost was really good, and then it got into the final season, and you're like, oh, I see where this is going. And then it went there, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Damn you, Lost. Damn you, Lost, for being so good for 4 seasons. It's kind of like that, except that the disappointment is only in the last few minutes, not in the whole last season. Like, it's a satisfying, amazing show right up until just the very, very end.
Okay, so you watched the original Twin Peaks. Did you go back and watch then what David Lynch did afterwards, the return to Twin Peaks?
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about.
Okay, so you had seen the original.
No, we hadn't seen the original either. We binge watched the original, the movie Fire Walk with Me, and Twin Peaks: The Return, all just blam in the space of a couple of weeks.
I didn't even know there was a movie you're supposed to watch in between.
Yeah, it's kind of a prequel.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of a prequel to the series, but you want to watch it after the series.
Okay, I am definitely in for doing this. I'm probably going to wait till the fall when it gets cold again and dark. The night comes sooner. But I do want to see it. The only David Lynch film that I just remember being just completely blown away was Naked Lunch. And to this day, I still think that is one of the most there are moments in that movie I just like, I can't believe what I'm watching. It's just, it has left an indelible impression. I will never see a movie like that again.
Well, I had a very awkward moment when I misunderstood what I was being invited to. And
it's like a Simpsons joke. Remember when
we'll
they all
just say
skip
that
school?
I'm banned from Fuddruckers from now on. That was really just some confusion on my part.
That bottle of lotion will fit in your pocket. You could have hidden that.
That's like the whole Simpsons joke where he goes, they walk out of the Naked Lunch. I can think of 2 things wrong with the name of that movie.
Well, I would end this off by saying that the original series can sometimes get hard to watch. It can sometimes be a little bit of a chore. And what I would recommend is that you do watch it, because the things that are kind of a chore to watch about the 80s series, he definitely re-references back in the 2017 series, The Return, and makes it retroactively pretty enjoyable.
Okay, cool.
So as you're sitting there going, what in the hell am I watching? Just know that that's going to pay off in 17 or 18 hours.
Oh, good. Good.
Great.
All right, let's move to our next category. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there anything else you're watching? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, not really. No.
All right, let's move to reading. And this one's going to be light on me. So, Walt, we'll go to you. I know you've been trying to battle your way, or not say battle. You've been trying to find time to finish Running with the Devil so we could get that author to maybe commit to join us.
Yeah, I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I will hopefully be knocking that out this week. And he's been great. I've got a couple of other questions I need to send him this week. It's a very interesting book. If you're a Van Halen fan, you definitely need to read this. Again, it's called Running with the Devil. It's not that long. It's just I've been super busy with a ton of stuff, and but I highly recommend it. And the author, Noel Monk, is just a great guy. But I've been sending him notes back and forth, asking him questions about the book and the band and stuff, and he's just been very gracious to answer those, or to say, hold on, it's the answer's coming. So really, really enjoyable book. It's on the Amazon. I think it's like $10 in paperback. So if you are a Van Halen or rock fan, you definitely want to pick it up. There's some crazy insights that he gives about other bands, and the section I just finished, they were touring with Black Sabbath right before Ozzy Osbourne left. So you can imagine some of the stories that are there.
Excellent.
So definitely check that out.
All right. Anything else you're reading, or is that it?
Yeah, but I'm not going to get into the whole list, but I'm really focusing on getting that book done.
All right. Well, it's not a book, but as you know, we do a side podcast, my wife and I, called the Marriage Fit Podcast. And to prepare for the episode that actually, by the time you're hearing this, has already been released, it was an essay that gave us an idea of what to talk about. What was called 10 Tips for Dealing with In-Laws. Having just had Easter dinner, having had a holiday where you had usually family getting together, and as we move forward toward maybe 4th of July and more families are getting out and more families are feeling comfortable getting together, we thought it was appropriate to have a discussion about the do's and don'ts, or the maybe what we've done wrong in the past with in-laws, and then how you can maybe go forward. So it was an interesting article. So it wasn't a book, but it did help us get ready for the episode that has already launched by the time you're hearing this. But it was called 10 Tips for Dealing with In-Laws by Dr. Lori Rozakis.
Nice.
All right. Well, Curtis, let's go to you. Anything you're reading that might be worth checking out?
I don't know if anything I'm reading is worth checking out.
He's got a qualifier for everything.
Please don't hate me.
There is this book called Bone China Mausoleum by Ann Odell. And you can find it on Amazon for like $16. I'm reading it. It's interesting. It's about a psychic who gets involved with like a stranger, and something mysterious is going on. I'm not far enough into the book to know what that mysterious something is, but there's definitely an atmosphere of foreboding.
It's called Bone China Mausoleum?
Bone China Mausoleum. And I contributed to the artwork of this book. Like, part of my photography is on the cover.
Really?
Some of it, yeah.
Oh, look at that. A very thinly disguised, self-promotion. I like that.
But it's also a pretty good book. Another book I'm reading, actually there's a whole series I'm reading called the G&B Detective Agency, which is by a guy that my wife knew a long time ago. It's unclear to me whether they were dating or not, but whatevs. It was a long time ago. This guy is
as long as they're not dating now.
This guy is a retired detective, and it's set in Ames, Iowa. And it's just a really good, hard-boiled detective fiction series. The G&B Detective Agency. It's a lot of fun. I doubt Walt would think it's real, although, the guy used to be a cop, so maybe he's got some good stuff going on in it. And then the other thing I'm reading is I said that wrong. Ready Player 2. Now, before you laugh, two things. My son is reading it, and he loves it, so I'm reading it so that we can talk about it. And also, the MST3K guys, the old MST3K guys, do a podcast called 372 Pages We'll Never Get Back, making fun of this book. So I also get the benefit of being able to listen to them talk crap about the book while I'm reading it.
Okay, now this is actually the sequel by Ernest Cline, right?
It is, yes. Ready Player 2.
So, because I've yet to read Ready Player 1, but I hear from a lot of people, if you grew up in the 80s, you would love the book. So I'm looking forward to reading Ready Player 1.
It's a lot of fun, and he can't write.
Okay. So is that for Ready Player 1 or Ready Player 2?
Both.
Or both?
Actually, it's for all of his books. Rich, his books are a lot of fun, but the guy is not a technically good writer. There's a lot of, if you are a writer or know English, you're going to listen or read these books and go, ooh. There's a lot of, like an example is him suddenly realizing that let's see, what would be a good example? I suddenly realized that my eyes were closed. And it's like, really? You suddenly realized your eyes were closed. Your eyes weren't... He can't ever just say that I closed my eyes as a first-person narrative. He has to say things like, I suddenly realized my eyes were closed. And it's just funny. Like... and there's a lot of that going through. The book is shot through with like silly stuff like that.
I've got a buddy of mine who is he's just actually put out his third novel. And every time he sees an adverb, an ly word, he said, you're not a good writer. Figure out a better way to say it. You don't need adverbs. Yep. And so he's an adverb Nazi. He's like, if you got adverbs, you must suck.
So those are the three things I'm reading this week.
I'm going to probably get them both because I'm okay with if it's entertaining. I don't need I don't need to be Faulknerian impressed every time I read a book. It's okay if I can read bubblegum and popcorn as long as it's fun.
Well, the one that's drawing me in most is this Bone China Mausoleum thing. Okay. The detective series are just a lot of fun. They're just cool.
Excellent. Well, the last category, as we are rapidly running out of time, Walt, what are we listening to? This could be podcast, could be an album, could be a channel on your Sirius XM that's brand new or that you've discovered. What are you listening to this week?
I'm going to give you 2 quick podcasts. The guys from the Office Space Minute have begun releasing their episodes, and they are fantastic. They do a tremendous job breaking down Office Space. I've always loved and appreciated that movie. Sometimes it makes me mad because of some of the jobs I've had, but if you are a fan of Office Space, you definitely want to check out Office Space Minute. Some of the discussions, frankly, went a little bit over my head because the guys are technology guys. So they start getting into, like MS-DOS dot
oh my
whatever.
God. And you used to work for IBM.
Yeah, I did. And I wasn't that great.
No, and that's why you don't work for IBM.
I was on the sales side. I was a people person.
Yeah.
So
I'm a people person.
So
and you still are to us.
Yes, when it comes to technology, I'm a people person. So great, but I mean, those guys are awesome. So check that out. They're usually about 20 minutes, 30 minutes per episode until Alan and I come on our different weeks, and they all of a sudden jump to about 45 to 55 minutes apiece.
We were told both of us apparently were the ones who held the record for the longest episodes for those episodes. So.
And I don't remember which one of us was on first.
You.
But okay, so I broke the record and held the record until Alan came on, and then he broke the record.
Look, there's a lot to talk about in that movie.
There is a lot of pain.
Hey, I'm going to reference back very quickly the Time Bandit Minute that we talked about earlier that Curtis is working on. And I was so happy. I told you, I said, you're going to love when you get on because they weren't trying to cut me off at 20 minutes or 30 minutes. It was like you just knew when you were done. And I think every one of our episodes was right at an hour.
Yeah.
It was great. I had so much fun. So
that's great. Yeah. And they're great guys that got a good understanding of film and everything. The other
guys
one
from
the
Office Space, yeah.
Is Radio Labyrinth, and we recommend them pretty regularly. They're good friends of ours. Their episode this week, I could only listen to the first 5 minutes and I had to shut it off because I have not seen King Kong versus Godzilla yet. I'm going to see it tomorrow, but their episode this week is a review of that. So if you have seen it, check out this week's episode. It's the April 4th, 3rd or 4th episode. And Tim and Jeff and those guys do a great job of breaking that down.
And Tim's going to be coming up on our show here in a few weeks. So
he is. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Anything else you're listening to, or that's it?
Those are the 2 I'll talk about. I've got, you know me.
Right.
I'm listening to way too much stuff.
So, you know how YouTube sort of has these algorithms? If you've been looking at something or maybe looking for a song or looking for how to do recipe, it tries to put all these suggestions of, if you like this video, you might like these.
Yes, and they're never accurate.
I just happened to sit there and it says, classically trained music composer reviews Iron Maiden's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I'm like, oh, this ought to be good. I spent like 4 hours watching this guy's reaction videos to all this metal. Like he's never heard of metal. He was a classic music composer. So I spent a lot of time watching The Daily Doug with Douglas Helvering, and I just decided to reach out to him. He'll be coming on our show later this season to talk about how a classically trained guy, talking about all of this symphonies and all of these experts and all of this composition, how does he like getting into metal? So it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's great.
That led me to another reaction YouTube channel that I'm watching with Elizabeth Zarhoff, where he was a classical composer. She is an opera singer. So she is a classically trained opera singer, and so she's reviewing metal. And what's awesome is they've both, without knowing each other, have found themselves being recommended by fans some of the exact same songs. So I'm like hearing the same thing, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, from a composer's perspective, then she does it from a singing perspective. And because of those 2 YouTube channels, I discovered the band from Finland I had never heard before, Nightwish. Have you ever heard of Nightwish, either of you?
No.
Sounds familiar, actually.
It's like Hans Zimmer, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and Evanescence came together to create a symphonic metal band. where she's going from opera notes to belting out typical, like, chest voice versus head voice. Some of these songs are 20 minutes long. It reminds me of Iron Maiden, telling stories of the creation of the earth, or telling stories about dealing with telling your kids bedtime stories. And I have been listening to Nightwish now every night for hours. I just put on my Amazon speaker. I say, Alexa, play the hits of Nightwish. And I'm just learning their discography. Amazing, because it's metal, but with an operatic singer who can still belt it out. It's such a blend, and I'm loving everything they've got. It's been so good. So check out Nightwish.
Great.
Nice.
Curtis, we wrap up with you. What are you listening to?
There are three things. I mean, I listen to 180 podcasts a week, so I'm just going to pick two. This Means Something. The Close Encounters.
The Close Encounters.
Yeah. Close Encounters by the Minute podcast. They are up to 70, and I didn't know they even existed, so I've just been blasting through them. I'm up to about 30 now after about 4 days.
It's awesome. I think you may be coming up to the episodes that I know I was on.
Oh,
so
nice. Okay.
I had a chance to guest the This Means Something, and I will tell you, I was so happy because I got on as they were analyzing the tones that they were able to define from the singers in India, when they kept hearing the group singing, and they had that group meeting in like the gymnasium sort of setting, and they said, here are the 5 tones. I was so happy I got to talk about the tones from Close Encounters. One
of the things that really makes this a standout podcast in the genre is that these two, and I'm sorry that I don't know the guy's name, Tierney Steele and her co-host, the guy from Chris Frank. They get
he had done the
experts
2001.
They've taken what the Indiana Jones Minute and the Star Wars guys minutes do, and they've really taken that out to its logical conclusion. Almost every episode, they have an expert that knows something about the movie going on, whether that's someone that knows music or whether that's someone that knows, psychology or whatever. You always get a real deep dive into what's going on into the movie, not just cinematography. It isn't just movie geeks. It's like an everything podcast. That's really, so I'm really enjoying that. That's my favorite thing. It's
really good. That's one that I'm listening to. Remember I said earlier in the episode here, I can't listen to everything. That's one I'm listening to. I like this. This Means Something's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they just released episode 16 today.
No, they're
on 70 something.
Oh.
Yeah, they're up in the 70s.
Oh, no, you're right. Like I said, I'm a people person, not a technology person.
Well, and then
they're on 81.
The second thing I'm listening to this week is that's been pretty relevant.
That's
Twiv.
my partner.
I'm listening to the podcast called Twiv. Do you guys know that one? This Week in Virology. It is virologists talking about things. Their tagline is it's the weekly podcast about viruses, the kind that make you sick. Obviously, for the last year, they've been talking about coronavirus a lot, and it's just been fascinating. This week in particular, they had an expert on who was talking about like how deadly the B117 variant is becoming to children. And it's just, there's a lot of technical talk where they actually do talk about stuff that you would only understand if you're scientists. But they start the show off with an update where they talk about it in a way that someone who's not a scientist, a layman, would understand it. And then from that, as you start listening, you can start to pick up on what the science jargon means, and you can listen to more and more of the show. But it's just 3 real serious scientists who happen to also be kind of entertaining in their way, in their geeky scientist way, talking about viruses. And I didn't know I'd be fascinated with it, but this last year changed everybody's taste a lot in a lot of those things.
What is it called again?
It's called This Week in Virology, or Twiv.
Twiv.
Yeah.
I added a segment. I do a Saturday talk show, and I added a segment where I bring a medical professional on, and we talk about medical issues, because I realize people are interested in not just the viruses, but health. How does your immune system work? What should I be eating differently? What have I been doing wrong that might make me have a weaker immune system versus stronger? I mean, it's amazing. It's topical. Why not bring an expert on?
Well, and this is the kind of podcast where they'll talk about, if you've got 5 people in a room with masks on and the room is 13 by 13. How long can you be safe in there before the math says that there will be enough of a viral load to make you, to get you, to have you catch it? Mm-hmm. They'll do stuff like that, and they'll have very serious talks about like how the testing works and what needs to happen there. But then they'll also do listener letters, and a 5-year-old will write something like, "Can you catch coronavirus from a fart?" And it's funny, but they also take it seriously.
Hey, I have that same question.
They also take it seriously. Well, okay, it turns out the answer is you can, because you can catch it from fecal matter.
Well, that's why the Chinese are doing anal swabs.
Right, and that is kind of the deal. It's one of the most accurate ways to say, and it's invasive and yucky. But there you go.
All right. Well, we are rapidly running out of time. Is there anything else that you're listening to? I know you said 2, but is there anything that popped in your head? Music, anything like that you want to add?
My wife is sick of hearing Slayer, so I found a channel for her that's called Chill 90s Alternative, and so I'm listening to a lot of that channel on SoundCloud.
I love alternative.
Or not SoundCloud, but what do you call that? The other one.
Serious?
The good one.
Or Spotify.
Spotify. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Chill 90s Alternative. That's the other thing we're listening to a lot of.
Walt, before we call this one done and in the books, we got to let people know a little bit more about us. They may have been finding us for the very first time because they're fans of Curtis Blaze, and they just now figured out who we are, and they want to know how to avoid us in the future. Where would they not go to find us?
You would not go to a lot of places, but places that you can go would be our website, which is thewilderride.com, or you can find us over on Facebook at facebook.com/thewilderride. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And you want to follow us there, and then a button's going to pop up to let you join our listeners group. And in the listeners group, you've got everything from, what's going on in entertainment, what's going on in the Marvelverse, what's going on with our show, and, of course, the weekly poll for the crappy movie that I get subjected to. Hopefully next week it's a little bit better than the one we had this week, which I think is going to definitely be the low bar for what we've got so far. This is definitely the worst movie that we've looked at. So you'll have some options this week and be able to vote for what we'll talk about next week. And that is where you find us.
All right. Curtis, before I do the last message, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. I've had a fantastic time this evening talking about photography and podcasts and movies, and I'm glad you were able to hang out with us.
Oh, I'm just glad that I was able to be interesting and not just sit around nodding.
Well, you did once, but that's okay. I'll edit that out. Folks, take a second to rate and review any of the podcasts that you like. And if you like them and you don't have time to rate and review, just share. Almost every podcatcher has the share button. Put it on your social media. Help us out, because all of us are doing this. You heard earlier, we do it because we have a passion for it. And if you like what you're listening to, share it. That helps us grow our audience, and then you can end up helping us grow to maybe new listeners. And I would highly recommend, come on back next week for a brand new guest. And I can tell you that coming up on the Wilder Ride this next week, see, we have our guests already planned out. We're going to have Micah Musio joining us. He's a YouTube helicopter guy who's going to give us a chance to see what it was like when everyone was staying home in early 2020, and he was out there just shooting what looked like just empty landscapes, empty freeways, empty overpasses, and how weird it was for a guy who does a lot of aerial photography. But Walt, I think you can add to this. He does some other stuff too.
He is also a car review expert at Kelly Blue Book. So we will talk cars, we will talk helicopters, we will talk COVID shutdown leading to some of his best aerial work. There's all kinds of stuff that he's involved in.
But to get that, you're going to have to come back here next week for another brand new episode of the Wilder Ride Listener's Lounge. Oh, that was so much fun.
Thanks, Curtis.
We just burned through 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Right?
Yeah, gone. Well, Curtis is already like 4 sheets to the wind because of how much he was been drinking, and I've only had my second beer, and I'm going